Hello, I'm Mr. Mickey and welcome to 10-Minute Social Studies. Today's topic is the Constitutional Convention and the eventual creation of the United States Constitution, as well as compromise and how compromise was an important part of the creation of that document. So what does compromise mean? Well, Webster's tells us that a compromise is an agreement. It's a settlement of a dispute that's reached between different sides. Now, this is the important part where both sides have to make concessions. Both sides have to give and take in order to reach that agreement. Before we talk about the Constitution, why did we need the Constitution? Many of you may know that we had a loose governing document before the Constitution called the Articles of Confederation. Now, the Articles of Confederation are not perfect. There are several weaknesses. So go ahead and stop the video and think, what are some of the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation? Well, under the Articles of Confederation, the majority of the power is given to states as opposed to the national government. States often act as independent countries. They have their own independent currencies. The federal government is weak. It's unable to even collect taxes. It can't regulate trade between the states or with foreign countries. It can't enforce laws. There's no executive branch. There's also no national court system, no judicial branch. In fact, to address issues in the Articles of Confederation, you have to have a unanimous vote from all 13 states to change anything within the Articles of Confederation. So all of these problems caused the Founding Fathers to decide that they can't just fix the Articles of Confederation, they're going to have to trash them completely. Enter James Madison, a man among men. James Madison holds the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in what is now known as Independence Hall. Yeah, that place where Nicolas Cage and the Declaration of Independence and the glasses and the brick wall, that place. Madison invites the delegates from all 13 states to come together to solve the problems of the Articles of Confederation. Now, before we talk about those delegates, it's time for a 10-minute social studies fun fact. Today's fun fact is that as the delegates were meeting in 1787 in Philadelphia at the convention, they met during an oppressive heat wave. During this heat wave, they were overrun by swarms of flies. Now, these men met in secret. They agreed early on in the convention to keep everything hidden from the public. They shut the doors, they shut the windows, they closed the curtains, and they stayed inside and sweated and swiped at flies. With conditions like this, it's impressive that these men were able to create such an important document. So who were these men? These men were from all across the United States, including such who's who as George Washington, who was quickly elected President of the Convention. Yes, President of the Convention, not quite President of the United States. Also the aforementioned James Madison of Virginia. Benjamin Franklin, still alive and kicking. Benjamin Franklin of Pennsylvania, and of course, $10 bill guy himself, Alexander Hamilton of New York. Together, these men had a variety of ideas for how to address the problems facing the new nation, but compromise would be necessary in order to get it done. Delegates from all 13 states attended the... Scratch that. Delegates from every state except for Rhode Island sent delegates to the Constitutional Convention. Again, much like the delegates themselves, the states have a variety of issues and solutions to the problems facing the government. As the men began their work, one of the biggest disagreements that emerged was how to fill the proposed new Congress. Now, James Madison, who arrived early, had done his homework. James Madison arrived with a plan that we now know as the Virginia Plan. Under the Virginia Plan, states with larger populations, like Virginia, would be given more representation in the proposed Congress. Now, other states that are smaller than Virginia are going to have a problem with this. Smaller states tend to favor a plan for representation in Congress called the New Jersey Plan. This plan is similar to what it was under the Articles of Confederation, where states were given an equal representation in Congress. This was a very important moment for the convention. Many delegates were on the verge of leaving. It was on the verge of breaking down. But the delegates were able to hammer out a compromise. Men from the large states and small states were able to agree on what is known as the Great Compromise, sometimes called the Connecticut Compromise. Under the Great Compromise, a two-chambered bicameral legislature was created, with a House of Representatives based upon the population of each state, and a Senate with equal representation, with each state receiving 2 members. Shortly after solving the problem between big states and small states, another problem arose, this one between states in the North and states in the South. This issue revolved around the counting of slaves. States in the South have much larger populations of slaves, due in large part to their agriculturally based economy, than states in the North. How should these slaves and other groups be counted towards population? The delegates were able to agree to what's known as the 3/5 compromise. Under this compromise, slaves would count 3/5 of a person. 3 out of every 5 slaves would be counted towards population in determining the representation in the House of Representatives, and also towards taxes. Delegates would also have to make later compromises regarding the Fugitive Slave Act and the slave trade. But again, this plants the seed that slavery is going to be a continual issue between states within the new United States. When the delegates were finished, they had created the U.S. Constitution, but it was not the law of the land yet. In order for the Constitution to go into effect, 3/4 of the 13 states had to ratify or approve the new Constitution. Many of the states and many of the people were concerned about this new document. One of those concerns centered around a lack of a Bill of Rights to protect citizens. As individual states debated ratification of the Constitution, 2 groups emerged, the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. Many consider these 2 groups to be among the first political parties within the United States. Federalists in favor of the Constitution, with Anti-Federalists opposing it for various reasons. In order for the Constitution to be ratified, a compromise of sorts was reached. One of the complaints of the Anti-Federalists revolved around the lack of the Bill of Rights within the new U.S. Constitution. It was agreed that one of the first acts of the new Congress would be to adopt a Bill of Rights with 10 amendments. Actually, the original Bill of Rights contained 12 amendments. 10 were agreed upon by the states. These amendments were added to the Constitution, and the Constitution has been amended a grand total of 27 times since 1789, with the last time coming in 1992. After much debate, the Constitution and its added Bill of Rights were finally approved by all 13 states, even Rhode Island. Together, these documents outline the powers and structure of our government as well as the rights of citizens. All right, let's wrap things up by examining how was compromise an important part of the creation of the Constitution. So let's stop the video and think of 3 ways that compromise was necessary in the creation of the Constitution. Compromise was necessary in determining the representation in Congress. The Great Compromise created 2 chambers in the legislative branch, with one based on population and one with equal representation. Another compromise was necessary in counting slaves towards the population. The 3/5 compromise settled that dispute. And finally, Federalists and Anti-Federalists argued about the addition of a Bill of Rights protecting the individual rights of citizens. These compromises and additions allowed the Constitution to become the law of the land and the foundation for our government today. That does it for 10 Minute Social Studies. I'm Mr. Mickey. I'll see you next time.